What's something people do in movies and shows that people never do in real life? Story 1. Say their backstory. Look, Sam, I know you're my brother who watched over me for so long after Dad died when you were 15 and I was 12. But I'm 27 now, and you have to let me live my own life after finally leaving my husband of 4 years because he cheated on me with our mom, who is very wealthy but doesn't pay for any of our expenses. Story 2. Pick me up at 8. The male character asks the female character out, and then she says this? Are they not going to discuss plans? Story 3. Always finding a parking space in front of your building and people with low-wage jobs in great apartments. Story 4. The rough and tough male character will smoke, drink excessively, not sleep, and have zero healthy habits. Then he takes his shirt off and he's absolutely ripped. Answer. And he'll fight off a dozen men without showing any pain and then wince in agony when his girlfriend wipes his brow with her handkerchief. Edit. Yes, lots of comments, and I agree about adrenaline. But the underlying story trope here is that he is saving her physically, and she is saving him emotionally. Exaggerating his invulnerability in the fight and vulnerability to her afterwards is an easy way of marking out both story threads, which is why so many movies used it. Story 5. Perform CPR for 3 seconds to revive someone. Please don't comment about how CPR hardly ever works in real life. That statistic is very skewed because most people who receive CPR are either very sick or very old. Think in a nursing home already? If you see someone drop in public, preform CPR. Story 6. Cooking an all-you-can-eat buffet's worth of breakfast for a family of 4 on a random school day morning. Answer. This is what always gets me. TV acts like school for kids in America starts at like 10 a.m. or something. I was up at 6:45 a.m. to catch the bus at 7 a.m. to make it to school for 9 a.m. My parents were not awake. They were not cooking eggs and bacon and toast and sausage for us every morning. Not a single person I knew had that growing up. Then the kids is like, sorry I gotta run, and grabs like a toast. Or the dad is like sitting there reading the newspaper while he eats. Story 7. Wake up looking glamorous like they're ready for a photo shoot. I look like a swamp creature in the morning. Story 8. I used to watch Days of Our Lives with my cousin when we were kids. Always thought it was funny when they'd stop and just stare at nothing when something intense happens, just before commercial break. Story 9. If they're hospitalized for long periods of time, even in a coma, they never seem to need to go to the bathroom, and they're not catheterized. Story 10. There will be 2 characters talking about something, and a third character shows up and smoothly joins the conversation and is completely up to date with what was being talked about while they were not there. Happens in cop shows all the time. Cop 1. What's the latest info we have on the suspect? Cop 2. We have eyewitnesses saying his hand was in the cookie jar just before the cookies were reported missing. Cop 1. Let's go pick him up. Cop 3. Entering the room. Hold your horses. Turns out, we have traffic camera evidence showing he was across town at the time the eyewitnesses say he had his hand in the cookie jar. Cop 2. Darn. Story 11. At a diner? Immediately drink scalding hot coffee from the server. It's poured in the cup, immediately in the mouth. Baffles my mind every time. Story 12. If the character at the beginning mentions asthma inhaler or insulin, it will be to add extra danger drama. Story 13. He'll call you. I'd like that. And then they both walk away after meeting for the first time and not exchanging numbers. Answer. I've always thought of that as a challenge back when everyone had landlines and only landlines. Something along the lines of, if he can find my number, he can have a date. Back in the day, we had school and church directories, and some bigger neighborhoods had their own directories. I could find pretty much any friend or acquaintance's number, or call around and find someone that had it or knew how to get it. And that's without getting out the phone book. It's not like we didn't exchange numbers, we did, but it wasn't hard to find. Hell, I met a girl at the neighborhood pool when I was like 10 or 11. She told me generally where she lived. I knocked on doors until I found her house. Second door, I knocked on, the old lady said, no, she lives in that house. Found her and asked her to go ride bikes. It wasn't considered creepy at the time. Phone etiquette is not really taught anymore, and it has changed a lot because of that. Plus time constraints on media episodes and whatnot, and saying, oh sure, it's 555, whatever, immediately breaks the fourth wall for me. Story 14. When driving or walking somewhere and the scene picks up when they're almost there, and the character being driven or taken there asks, so where are we going? This would have been asked at the outset of the trip, not near the destination. Story 15. Hold empty-to-go coffee cups and pretend to drink it every once in a while. This is such a pet peeve of mine, the way they swing around cups of coffee that you can tell or just empty. At least put water or some liquid in them to force the actors to adjust their movements to holding a cup full of liquid. Answer: film industry vet and improvisation teacher here. Empty cup acting is not only one of the most difficult things you'll ever try to do as an actor, it's one of those things you can't stop noticing as a viewer once you notice it the first time. Empty box acting is the same deal. There are multiple reasons for empty cups. First and foremost, you don't want spills, either on the actor or on all the wires and equipment they're surrounded with. You spill on concrete? That shoot takes forever to dry, and waiting for the crew to dry it up will hold up shooting because all takes need to match. Same if an actor spills even a drop on their costume, it will need to be dried, or they'll literally need to go to wardrobe to change. Another reason is preventing the need to pee, or making an actor feel sick after too many sips of water. Same goes for food. Spit buckets exist for a reason. Yet another reason is preventing sloshing, splashing sounds on any of the mics. The mics they use are extremely sensitive to sounds like sloshing or crinkling. That's why everybody carries fake groceries in big paper bags too. Plastic bags crinkle too much. It's hella easier on sound editors to use. Paper bags and the groceries are just pieces of foam specifically designed to make zero sound, and empty grocery bag acting is yet another acting challenge. While we're on the subject, it's very hard to perform a scene inside a car and make it look convincing. Even with markers in your eye line, it's hard to know exactly where to focus your eyes, and it's hard to imagine a road ahead when you're inside a big green screen room, or when you're being hauled on a truck bed, or behind a tow car. Just go sit in your car in your garage or driveway and try to mimic realistic driving while also performing lines. It's harder than you might think. Some devoted actors actually drill themselves on mimicking driving by muscle memory so they won't need to think about it on the day of shooting, but most actors just do their best and focus most on their lines. If a viewer feels some scene is ruined by fake driving, that's kind of their own problem. A fun party game for thespian nerds and others is to try empty Kubik's bag acting. Film everybody's attempts with a phone and judge who did it best. It's fun, and it's an exercise in understanding just how challenging that stuff really is for actors. Story 16. Unload the entire magazine of their firearm and still be able to communicate with their team. I once took 2 shots at a coyote that was attacking my grandparents' chicken coop, and I swear I couldn't hear for the next 20 minutes without repeatedly asking what? Answer: I shot my .45 without hearing protection once, and I literally didn't even hear the shot. Just instantly deaf for like a full minute before my ears started ringing and the sound slowly started coming back. That was one shot with a handgun, and I was outdoors. Granted, it was on a range and there were 2 concrete walls on either side of me, so it probably amplified the sound, but still. Guns are loud as fudge. Story 17. Historical characters with perfect white teeth, cowboys, peasants in the 13th century, Victorian shopkeepers, you name it. perfect pearly whites. Story 18. Instant food orders. Count the seconds between the time Sheriff Buford T. Justice orders a Diablo burger and it's handed to him in a to-go bag. Story 19. Specifically for kids, be that fudge rude. Every kid teen in movie shows nowadays is written so poorly, talks horribly towards the adults in their life, always has some mean quip to respond with, usually only has lines relating to technology video games. Yes, kids can be rude, but it's not every kid. Story 20. Sleep all perfectly cuddled up to their spouse all night without getting uncomfortable, moving, sweating, or anything else. Then, wake up all spooned up and stare into each other's faces. Been married 15 years. Nope. Story 21. People with no place to live, no jobs, or no money wearing different trendy clothes every day with perfect hair, makeup, and jewelry. Story 22. Waking up with the sun streaming through the windows when they have an early job. 75 of the time I'm waking up in the dark. Story 23. Walk into a bar or coffee shop, order a drink and leave without taking more than a sip or two, and usually without paying. Story 24. Step into the shower, then turn on the water. What are you, nuts? You want chilblains or something? Gotta let that chute warm up first. Answer. There was a recent AITA thread about this, where this woman posted saying she got mad and yelled at her husband because he doesn't hit the switch or whatever to make the water go to shower mode from bath mode. IDK. But then she'd step into the shower, turn the water on and have to hit the switch, and it would annoy her because that would make her get hit with cold water. The whole thread was against her talking about how she's the crazy one for getting in the shower, then turning the water on anyway, haha. Story 25. Couple having intimacy, they finish, and one of them says, "I gotta go," then puts the clothes on and leaves. I mean, no wash any of the private parts before putting the clothes on? I hope people don't do that for real. Story 26. Odd intimacy. Nothing weird or funny ever happens. No transitions between positions. Usually just slow, loud missionary. There's a place for that, but it's like every movie. Answer. There's a huge decline in intimacy scenes in TV film in any case, something that gets remarked on a lot in film circles. I kind of wonder if you'll see them decline in realism even more, as you likely have fewer professionals in the non-adult content film industry who have experience acting directing them. I remember as a teenager thinking it must be pretty hot to film an intimacy scene. But I've seen enough interviews over the years from actors to know it's anything but. Tons of takes, unnatural positions, having to do weird things because you're doing it to show observers, not actually doing it for normal pleasure, etc. Story 27. Pull out a bottle of whiskey, pour it into fancy glasses, and share it with someone, in like a police station. Story 28. Incapacitate a murderer trying to off them, and then walk away, leaving the murderer lay there with a loaded gun axe knife for easy reach to do the predictable second attack. Trust me, I picked it up and shot him 16 more times. Okay, serious answer. Walk up to a bar and order a beer. You tell them the brand 100 of the time, or they'd look at you like you were an idiot. Story 29. I like unrealistic elapsed time where nothing happened. I recently saw something where you see a couple going to a play or something at night. Then it cuts to them late the next morning and she asks, "Did you like the play?" That play was 12 hours ago. Why didn't you ask after the play? Have you not talked at all since we saw you enter the play until now? Who does this? The same situation when you call up someone and say, "We have something we need to do. I'll pick you up in 5. Then it cuts to later when both people are in the car looking across the street at a building, and he then tells the person what they are doing. First, if someone says something super vague and expects me to be ready in 5 minutes, no, I want to know what we are doing. Even if picking me up in 5 minutes with no answer was somehow normal, like we assumed the phones were tapped or something, I would want to know as soon as I get in the car, not when we get to the destination, which who knows how long I've been riding in the car in silence the whole time. Story 30. Eating Chinese food out of the white containers with chopsticks, either around a late-night work meeting or on a couch with friends. Bonus for stealing a piece of someone else's. Throwing a massive bowl of popcorn in the air in response to a game or movie on the TV. Gesticulating wildly with an obviously empty coffee cup. Making out with someone in a sudden, fast, almost violent way that involves ripping off clothes and possibly falling on the floor together. This often follows an argument. Having a dual couple wedding or one arranged in a crazy hurry in a day for no apparent reason. Story 31. No screens on bedroom windows so teens can climb in and out of each other's windows. Big fistfights where there are people getting pounded non-stop in the face and they're completely fine. No bruising, missing teeth, unconsciousness. A woman who is throwing up is always about to find out she's pregnant. Answer. I live in Australia, and windows without fly screens seemed like something completely fictional to me, because bugs and spiders. But after traveling, I discovered that so many places in the world just have these big bare windows. Even places with a lot of bugs, like Indonesia and South Africa. I always wonder why it's not standard to install fly screens or security mesh on windows in more places, especially tropical countries with mosquito-borne diseases, or hot places with dangerous wildlife or high crime. Story 32. If you pay attention, you'll notice this weird thing where people in movies rarely close doors. They open the door, come in, then go about their business and leave the door open behind them. Story 33. In every crime drama series ever, when the police approach you and start asking questions as a witness, you do not just continue to walk around performing your job during the discussion. Story 34. I dislike that they're always in the hallway or walking to class when the bell rings. If you're walking to class and the bell rings, you're late. If you're in the hallway and the bell rings and everyone comes out of the classrooms, you were ditching class. You should always be in a classroom when the bell rings. Story 35. Visit with friends before work or school. I'm going to sleep as long as I can. I'll see my friends later, maybe. Story 36. I may be wrong since I'm not a parent, but I am in the middle of Season 3 of Squid Game Season 3. And, spoilers for anyone who hasn't watched it yet, the pregnant woman had her water break and was holding her baby in a 5-minute time span. I don't think that's real. Story 37. Doctors who care about their patients and go above and beyond to figure out what's actually wrong with them. Story 38. She's a poor, starving artist who works 12 a.m. to 5 a.m., but has a massive loft apartment and lives alone in a notoriously overpriced city. Story 39. Anyone in healthcare medicine first aid could tell you that watching someone do CPR on TV is painful, literally and figuratively. Story 40. Say something beautiful and touching, then close their eyes gently before dying looking as fit and hot as ever. Story 41. Switch on the news, see something devastating to them, and then switch it off before the story is done. Story 42. Why do they always splash their face with water in the bathroom sink when stressed or upset? I've never known anyone to do that in real life. Story 43. When people are mad and yelling at each other, they are also yelling rational, well-thought-out counter-arguments to everything the other person yells. It's ridiculously unrealistic. I always love the fights in Scorsese films because they are always real. Like in Raging Bull, when they go from screaming about a steak to screaming at the neighbor's dog. Or when he's screaming at his wife, she starts screaming about Fudge all his friends. Story 44. become a widely known expert in their field with multiple advanced degrees before age 30, also have perfect eyeliner after nearly being blown up eaten by a dinosaur 20 years after the zombie apocalypse, like I'm gonna risk my life to loot a Sephora. Story 45. Have perfect clothing, haircuts, hair color, makeup. Clothing never looks wrinkled or worn. No matter what the person's income level or job, they have perfectly new and pressed clothing and unworn shoes at all times. I'm not saying that's not possible, but even if they have a dirty job, they manage to stay crispy fresh. The hair I always notice in a show like Law & Order SVU. Mariska Hargitay has a high position in the show, I know, but I always notice what an elaborate and expensive hair color she has. She must be at least partially gray IRL, and on the show she has dyed, dark brown roots, and then balayage of lighter caramel highlights at the ends. Plus her hair always looks like it's blow-dried and then wand-curled. It just seems a high-maintenance look when you're on a serious case. Women in movies or TV rarely wrap or tie their hair up before bed or around the house. They wake up with fresh makeup on. Story 46. Speak flawlessly without any ums or uhs, no misstatements, no malformed words, no stutter, etc. Doesn't happen all the time, but most dialogue in most movies is like this. Story 47. Checking out a suspicious noise or calling out to a malicious-looking figure. Everyone in real life is dipping and splitting up when in an unknown area. Meth. That's how you die, Earl. Story 48. The phone rings. Turn on your TV. Turns on TV. The TV just happens to be set to the exact channel required to witness the exact moment that the key information is being reported. Story 49. Have a conversation while in the same room and within 5 feet of someone, and they never hear what you said. Story 50. Hey, wanna run to the mall? Yeah, sure, let's go. No one is like, me. I don't feel like it. Can you give me like 15 mine to get ready? Sure, I gotta pee first though. Story 51. Taking a pill for like anxiety, depression, painkiller, and it instantly works when you just swallowed it or you took it without water, anything else. Yes, you can take pills without a drink, but it depends on people. Story 52. Sit right next to each other on a couch. It's a camera thing, but sitting shoulder to shoulder with a friend when there is plenty of room to spread out is weird. Story 53. The fake smoking drives me nuts. No one would pay for an expensive pack of cigarettes just to suck smoke in their mouths and then spit it out. Just don't have the character smoke. It's bad acting. Story 54. Take action before understanding a situation clearly. Also, try to date 2 people at one location at the same time. Story 55. I always laugh when a TV show or movie has 2 characters meet up and one goes, "There's my favorite," insert relationship to character. I am 45 years old. I have a good amount of friends, come from a large family, and have so many work acquaintances. But I've never, ever thought to say, "There's Bob, my favorite colleague," or "Carrie, the cousin I rarely see," or, well, if it isn't the black sheep of the siblings, Billy. Story 56. During scenes with women on public toilets, pull their underwear down to their ankles so it's viewable beneath the door. Drives me nuts. Story 57. Aim for and shoot at extremities. Any experienced marksman or well-trained enthusiast will tell you to aim for center mass. Story 58. Drive down the highway while having a conversation and looking directly at the passenger and not at the road. Story 59. Apparently, only low-class people pour their drinks straight from the liquor bottle. Everyone else has a sideboard with cut glass decanters and ice always at the ready in the bucket. Also, sweeping all the food and the carton of milk onto the floor off the kitchen island so they can have intimacy there. Story 60. Character says they have something important to say, but can't say it where they are. screen flips to somewhere that would have taken 20 or more minutes to get to before the character explains things. What were they talking about in between? Story 61. Wake up, jump out of bed, immediately get dressed and leave the house. Like, what kind of bladders do these people have? Story 62. Having an emotionally charged conversation with someone whose back is turned so you are both facing the camera. No one ever says, "Can you turn the fudge around? I can't hear a bastard word you're saying." Story 63. Get into bed with a full face of makeup, sit straight up at a 90-degree angle, and rub lotion onto one elbow at a time. Story 64. Fighting bad guy after bad guy for 10 minutes straight without showing the slightest hint of fatigue. Story 65. When I wake up in the morning, neither my partner or I have fresh breath. I mean, we've been asleep all night. The last thing I want to do is start madly kissing her. Neither of us are going to jump each other's bones. Also, I'm going to have a full bladder. It ain't happening unless I visit the bathroom and freshen up a bit. Story 66. The intimacy thing. Guy and girl have intimacy, he rolls off, and they go to sleep. If he's wearing a rubber, he'd be taking it off. If he's not, she's cleaning herself up. I get that some couples wouldn't clean themselves up after, but the majority would. Story 67. Lying a baby down in a crib and walking away as the baby blissfully and effortlessly slips into sleep. Story 68. Never work out logistics. Okay, you're going on a date, but where? When? Meeting there or picking up? What time? Story 69. I'm beginning to think those romantic moments of just doing chores with your spouse and enjoying your time together are a myth. I try to do chores out of sight from my wife so she does not start an argument. Otherwise, she will find some shoot to get irate about 90 of the time. We can celebrate a hard day's work after, but that in-the-moment, everyday romance is bullshit. Story 70. Look like supermodels. I mean, have you seen people IRL? Sure, we got some pretty people, but most of us are ugly dogs. I find it completely implausible that everyone on staff at this police department is hot as shoot. I don't buy it. Story 71. After having coitus, the person using the bathroom needs to drape themselves in the sheet to walk the 5 etsy to get there. Story 72. Every scene of someone being woken in the middle of the night, their cell phone is never plugged in. What psychopath doesn't charge their phone at night? Story 73. Dyeing and cutting their hair perfectly with box dye and nail clippers in 10 minutes from black to blonde in a bathroom with 5% light. Story 74. It's hilarious how movie characters with entry-level jobs somehow afford downtown lofts while I'm over here eating ramen in my shoebox apartment. Also, nobody casually whips up a 5-star breakfast spread before work unless they're a professional chef or lying. And don't get me started on action heroes who treat their bodies like garbage but still look like Greek gods. Story 75. Characters can drink and drink and drink, and then suddenly snap into well-articulated sober mode when the situation calls for it. Story 76. Walking in the front door and leaving it open. This happens in sitcoms all the time. No one in real life opens the front door and leaves it wide open after entering. Story 77. Have intimacy and in the morning hold the sheets over their breasts so the man in camera can't see nipples. Likewise, just had intimacy and yet both are fully dressed. Obviously, American TV. Europeans show the boobies. Story 78. After having intimacy, the lady just gets up and puts her clothing on. No dribble down the legs or cold-soaked panties. Nope, nothing. All the goods are warmly and cleanly ensconced internally. Story 79. Be the middle of the day, have the curtains open, have sunlight coming into the house, and also then have all the table lamps and standing lamps switched on. The medieval equivalent of this is the random buckets of fire, where you'll have a street scene, a dock, etc., where someone has set up braziers at random spots, collected all the wood and set fire to them. For a medieval person, that's a lot of wood to waste for zero reasons. And once you spot this trope, you can't help but notice how stupid and wasteful it is. Story 80. Talking. Talking in places that would be too loud to hear. Talking from distances that would be impossible to hear another person talking. You ain't flirting on the dance floor, at least not with words. Real life has so much background noise, which would make most conversations impossible. Story 81. Groups of adult friends are constantly hanging out and doing things together. In real life, it's so hard to coordinate a group of busy people, sometimes it takes months. Story 82. I usually see this in horror movies, particularly ones about a haunted house, family movies into a new home. The family has 2 boxes and a potted plant. Where's all your stuff? Story 83. Need to talk to someone? Just show up at their house unannounced. Don't call ahead. Doesn't matter what time it is, or how non-urgent the topic is. Let me knock on your door and linger for a 3-minute conversation that could have been a phone call or a text. Story 84. Romantic comedies always have some colossal misunderstanding, and the dude doesn't catch on from context clues that she's gotten hold of some misinformation. They always talk around the issue so the movie can proceed to that montage where it's raining all the time and the 2 people are trying to go about their lives without each other, but they're all bummed out. Story 85. In old BW films, they do this back projection whilst they pretend to drive a car and they keep jagging the steering wheel left and right. Even more implausible when it's set in the US with its straight roads. Or when the old phone goes dead, they keep tapping the phone to being BK the person they were talking to. Story 86. Live in a house or apartment that is clearly not affordable on their character's income. Go to a bar and order a beer, and the bartender magically knows what kind of beer they want. 2 characters having a drink, whiskey, or whatever, and the glass is filled so much they'd be slurring and staggering if they drank all that. Story 87. Carry a single unmarked brown paper grocery bag consisting of celery and a loaf of French bread, with a possible bottle of red wine visible as well. Story 88. Always hearing what someone said clearly without missing anything. I need more shows where people say, huh. Story 89. I have yet to come home from the store with a bunch of flowers and a baguette sticking out of the top of the bag. Story 90. When someone falls the ledge of a cliff or building or whatever, manage to grab onto the ledge after falling, hold themselves there, and then have the upper body strength to pull themselves up? Yeah, there's no way. Bonus points if they catch someone else whilst they fall and still manage to grab the ledge. Story 91. Walk into their house or apartment and just leave the door open. Wear shoes inside just to hang around the house. Use someone's full name when proposing or saying they love them. Drive with windows open, convertible top down, or ride a motorcycle and have their hair stay perfectly styled. Sleep in full makeup and wake up without it smeared all over. Story 92. Say each other's name constantly, talk with their faces way too closely, sit on the same side of the table, magically auto-enhance grainy security footage to reveal the criminal. Story 93. Crawl through air vents Die Hard style. There's no way those thin, flimsy vents could hold the weight of a human. Story 94. I'm a gay guy, so correct me if I'm wrong, but I assume women do not leave their bras on while having intimacy nearly as much in real life. Story 95. Blowing up a frame of low-res security footage, then resolving the face clearly, usually after the boss orders you to enhance. Story 96. Have an unwrapped baguette sticking out of a short paper bag. Have a 4-course breakfast set up, eat a bite of toast, then say they're late for work and sip of orange juice. Recover contents of a computer that's heavily damaged by pulling random shootout that is not the hard drive. Story 97. I'm sure once in a while it happens, but tripping when running away from a murderer every single effing time? Story 98. I can explain. proceeds to cry and watch the other character walk away instead of just explaining which would have avoided the whole problem. Story 99. Cook a whole smorgasbord of breakfast only for someone to grab one piece of toast, toss an apple in the air, and head out the door saying, "No time. I have a busy day ahead of me." Story 100. Having all the breakfast shoot on the table. Who brings out the whole jug of milk, carafe of juice, and the box out to the table to eat a bowl of cereal? Story 101. You sit down at your desk with a fast food bag. You open it and take out a beautiful hamburger. As you're about to take a bite, your partner comes in and says, "We got a lead on the Fitzgerald case. Let's go." So you take your entire uneaten lunch and dump it into the trash, and then go. I mean, take it with you or put it in the fridge. WTF. Story 102. Drive in a crowded area and find a parking spot immediately in front of where they need to be. Get into a car, get it started, and get going immediately without fumbling with the keys or putting into gear. The radio never comes on when they start the car, and during a chase, always seem to know exactly where they're going and when they've never been there before. Story 103. Grabbing a newspaper at the same time as someone else, or spilling your coffee all over someone, and you have instantly found your soulmate. Story 104. Getting up after being picked up and thrown by an explosion. Any blast strong enough to do that has probably broken half your bones and ruptured something internally. Story 105. Driving straight along while moving the steering wheel from side to side and also looking at the passenger instead of looking at the road. Story 106. Wear heels. 247. I know some people do, but most of them aren't fighting crime, doing parkour, or even just running in them. Your heroine can look just as sexy and kick just as much jerk in combat boots or sneakers FFs. Story 107. In old movies and TV shows, if the car is parked at a curb, they used to get in the passenger side and scoot across. Story 108. Gets shot and then is back in the fight 20 minutes later. It was just the shoulder. Yeah, bro, you're down and out for at least 6 weeks after that, and your arm will never fully recover. Story 109. Most women don't leave the house without a bag of some kind. We don't have pockets big enough for phone, keys, and wallet. Story 110. They make a date with zero conversation or negotiation about anything. Hey, person with whom I just had a meet cute, can I take you out to dinner on Friday night? Let's do it. Great, see you then. End scene. No phone numbers exchanged, no discussion of where or when, no discussion of when to talk about these details. Story 111. Gracefully fall into bed. Stretch. Check. Foot brace. Check. Wrist brace. Check. Mouth guard. Check. CPAP. Check. Winter hat. Check. Go night. Story 112. Taking off their glasses and becoming super hot. I don't know about anyone else, but I look ridiculous without my glasses. Story 113. Common in all the horror movies and shows. Walking around in the house without switching on the lights when you hear some eerie sounds. Children will never sleep with their parents no matter how many times they insist them to that they're scared when sleeping alone in the nights. Parents will say, "No, you're a big boy girl." But EF man, you guys just had some paranormal activity 2 days ago. Still? Story 114. It's a minor annoyance, but I dislike how inaccurately movies represent money. I think it was in Money Heist where they were stealing billions of dollars, and 2 people walked out with 2 duffel bags. No, $1 billion weighs 22K pounds. 2 people aren't carrying that. Story 115. In movies, delivers full life story in one dramatic monologue. In real life, forgets why I walked into the room mid-sentence. Story 116. Wake up and go to breakfast at a diner, or stop by a friend's house, or do a million other things before school or work starts. Story 117. Hope I didn't scroll past but a full tabled breakfast buffet. grab a strawberry and sip of OJ and out the door. Makes me so mad. Story 118. When a kid's parents lay out a whole breakfast spread in the morning with pancakes, eggs, waffles, etc., and the kid takes one bite of toast and leaves because they're late for school. Story 119. They either have a deep conversation or discover some dark secret about someone and then immediately pick up the phone to call before the person has even left the building. They take one step outside the room you're in, and people are already on the phone calling to talk about it. And miraculously, nobody ever turns around to say, "Oh, I forgot my keys." Story 120. Crashing through windows in a fight or breaking into a house by just breaking a window by hitting it gently with a small rock. Toughened glass is yet to reach Hollywood? When digging a hole to bury a body, the hole always has perfectly vertical sides. Anyone who's ever dug a hole knows this is impossible, only telling the punchline to a joke. Own bearer bonds. Story 121. Nobody dries off properly after a shower. Just wrap it around the waist and head on out of the bathroom. What kind of a fucking psycho does that? Story 122. I live in NY. Never have I ever been able to just roll up and park in front of a NYC building that I was going to, especially not a brownstone neighborhood. Story 123. Get knocked out by blunt force trauma to the head and wake up later just fine with full motor function. Story 124. Just ask for a beer. Give random money to a taxi driver and not get change. As far as I'll have a beer, it's just not worth jumping through the hoops for some brand's legal department. Just get a beer. The don't show the transaction thing is make things on the screen be worth the viewing. You got 90, 120 minutes? You gonna show that whole wait in line at the supermarket? Gonna show him walking from the parking lot to the office? The list of things of Hollywood gunfights versus reality is miles long. Story 125. Shoot guns inside buildings without hearing protection and still be able to whisper to each other afterwards. Story 126. Sit with others and play.